Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step away from the business account section. That area is for actual business owners only. Marcus Webb's voice carried the practiced authority of someone who'd spent 3 years protecting Meridian Financial Center from what he considered undesirable elements. He looked up from his mahogany desk in the prestigious business banking floor. His navy suit pressed to corporate perfection as the black woman in jeans and a faded MIT hoodie approached the executive banking counters. Zara Williams paused mid-step, her MacBook bag slung over one shoulder, wireless earbuds still dangling from her neck after the 18-hour coding session that had finally cracked the encryption algorithm she'd been wrestling with for weeks. Her tired eyes met Marcus's dismissive gaze across the marble expanse of Meridian's flagship downtown branch. The lunch crowd moved through the lobby with quiet efficiency. Executives in tailored suits, venture capitalists clutching leather portfolios, tech entrepreneurs discussing million-dollar deals in hushed tones. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across Italian marble floors, while the soft hum of commerce created an atmosphere of exclusive wealth. "Excuse me," Zara said, her voice carrying the slight rasp of someone who'd survived on coffee and determination for the past 72 hours. She shifted her weight, feeling every hour of sleep she'd missed while debugging the cybersecurity protocol that would revolutionize banking infrastructure. Marcus gestured toward the main lobby with practiced condescension. "Personal banking is downstairs, miss. The escalator's right behind you. They'll help you with check cashing or whatever you need." The casual dismissal hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar. Nearby customers glanced over with the idle curiosity of people accustomed to watching others being sorted into their proper economic categories. Jessica Chen, a tech influencer with 50,000 followers, had been live streaming her experience opening a new business account when Marcus's voice caught her attention. She discreetly angled her phone to capture the unfolding interaction, recognizing the familiar dynamics of institutional bias playing out in real time. "I'm here for business banking," Zara replied calmly, approaching Marcus's desk despite his obvious desire for her to disappear. "I need to transfer funds from my company's operating account." Marcus's laugh was sharp and knowing. "Your company." He leaned back in his ergonomic chair, scanning Zara from her untied sneakers to her rumpled hoodie. "Look, I deal with this every day. People come in here with elaborate stories, fake business cards trying to access accounts that don't belong to them." The ambient noise of the banking floor seemed to quiet as other customers began paying attention to the escalating confrontation. Jessica's live stream showed 200 viewers, then 500 as her followers recognized the discriminatory treatment unfolding before them. Zara reached into her laptop bag, retrieving a slim leather wallet. "I have proper identification and account documentation." She placed a business card on Marcus's desk with deliberate calm. "Quantum Dynamics Solutions. I need to authorize a transfer for our Goldman Sachs meeting this afternoon." Marcus picked up the card like it was contaminated evidence. "Quantum Dynamics." He read the embossed lettering with theatrical skepticism. "Never heard of it. And trust me, I know every legitimate tech company in this city." The card bore Zara's name in elegant font beneath the company logo, a sleek, geometric design that had won awards from design firms Marcus had never heard of. But he saw only what his preconceptions allowed him to see. "Anyone can get business cards printed for $20 at Kinko's." Marcus continued, his voice loud enough for surrounding customers to hear. "The sophisticated scammers always have professional-looking materials. That's how they build credibility for their schemes." A well-dressed white woman at the nearby investment desk whispered to her companion, "Good thing they're being careful. You never know who's trying to steal these days." But an elderly black businessman shook his head with recognition, born from decades of similar treatment. His expression carried the weight of countless encounters with institutional suspicion. Zara's phone buzzed against her leg. The caller ID showed board meeting reminder, 2:00 p.m. She silenced it without looking, but the motion wasn't lost on Jessica's camera or the growing audience of customers watching the drama unfold. Mr. Webb, Zara said, reading his nameplate. I understand security concerns. However, I have legitimate business to conduct. Perhaps you could verify my account status, rather than making assumptions based on my appearance. Marcus's smile widened with professional satisfaction. Ma'am, I've been in banking for 3 years. I can spot a fraud case from across the room. The way you're dressed, the timing of your visit, the convenient business card, it all fits the pattern. He gestured broadly at the opulent surroundings. This is Meridian Financial Center, not some strip mall check-cashing service. We serve Fortune 500 companies, venture capital firms, tech unicorns with billion-dollar valuations. Real businesses with real money. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so painful. Zara's company had been featured on the cover of Forbes just 6 months ago. Her face had graced the front page of the Wall Street Journal's technology section 3 times in the past year. But Marcus saw only skin color and casual clothing. Jessica's live stream had reached 200 viewers. Comments poured in from tech industry insiders who recognized Quantum Dynamics as one of the most influential cybersecurity firms in the world. The hashtag quantum banking began trending organically. Sir, perhaps we should verify the account before making assumptions, suggested David Rodriguez, the security officer who'd been watching the interaction with growing discomfort. His 10 years in banking had taught him to recognize the signs of discrimination disguised as security protocol. Marcus waved him off dismissively. Officer Rodriguez, I appreciate your input, but I've got this handled. This woman is clearly trying to access accounts that don't belong to her. Zara's second phone, the encrypted device she used for government consulting, buzzed with a message from the Pentagon's cybersecurity division. She ignored it, maintaining her focus on the immediate situation. Mr. Webb, I'd like to speak with your supervisor, Zara, said, her voice maintaining its professional composure despite the mounting humiliation. This level of scrutiny seems inconsistent with standard banking procedures. My supervisor, Marcus, laughed. Lady, my supervisor is going to ask the same questions I'm asking. Where do you work? What's your annual income? How did you acquire the funds you're claiming to own? The questions hung in the air like accusations. Around them, other customers conducted business with minimal verification, signature cards, brief identity checks, courteous assistance. The contrast was stark and deliberate. A young black professional in line behind Jessica pulled out his own phone, recognizing the systematic nature of what he was witnessing. His recording joined Jessica's live stream in documenting institutional bias in real time. I'm self-employed, Zara replied calmly. Quantum Dynamics is a cybersecurity consulting firm specializing in financial infrastructure protection. Marcus snorted with derision. Self-employed. Right. Let me guess you're a consultant or entrepreneur with no verifiable income. That's what they all claim. He leaned forward with theatrical concern. Miss, I'm trying to help you here. These elaborate schemes never work. The bank has sophisticated fraud detection systems. Whatever game you're running, it's going to be exposed. Zara's phone buzzed again. This time the caller ID showed MIT Alumni Office Commencement Speaker confirmation. She declined the call, noting the irony that her former university was calling, while a banker questioned her legitimacy. Mr. Webb, I graduated from MIT with degrees in computer science and electrical engineering, Zara said quietly. I founded Quantum Dynamics in 2009 with $47 and a laptop. We now employ over 800 people and hold cybersecurity contracts with— Stop right there, Marcus interrupted, his hand raised like a traffic cop. The more elaborate the story, the more suspicious it becomes. MIT degrees. $47 cybersecurity contracts. It's all too convenient. Jessica's live stream had reached 2,000 viewers. Tech journalists were beginning to recognize the name Quantum Dynamics from recent congressional hearings on digital infrastructure security. The comments section exploded with recognition and outrage. Patricia Hendricks, the branch manager, approached from her glass office. Her heels clicked authoritatively against the polished marble as she assessed the situation with the practiced eye of someone who'd built her career on careful judgment about who belonged in exclusive banking spaces. "What seems to be the issue?" Patricia asked, though her body language already aligned with her subordinate's assessment. She looked at Zara with the same skeptical evaluation that had sorted customers into appropriate categories for 15 years. "Potential fraud case," Marcus explained importantly. "This person claims to own a technology company and wants to access business accounts. All the red flags are there: vague employment details, suspicious timing, no legitimate documentation." Patricia's eyebrows rose with practiced concern. "That does sound unusual. Ma'am, we have strict protocols for business account access, especially for large transactions. I'm sure you understand our need for enhanced verification procedures." The phrase "enhanced verification procedures" carried weight beyond its literal meaning. Everyone in the lobby understood the subtext. Some customers required additional scrutiny based on factors having nothing to do with legitimate security concerns. Zara reached into her laptop bag again, retrieving her driver's license and a sleek titanium banking card that caught the crystal chandelier's light. The card bore Meridian Financial's logo alongside her name in raised lettering, indicating the highest tier of business banking services. Marcus barely glanced at the documents. "Fake IDs are incredibly sophisticated these days," he announced to the growing audience of customers. "The counterfeit market has advanced technology. They can replicate anything: driver's licenses, credit cards, even bank cards with proper logos." He held up the titanium card like evidence in a criminal trial. "These forgeries are getting better every month. The criminals invest serious money in making them look authentic." Jessica's livestream viewer count climbed steadily. 3,400 viewers, then 4,200. Comments began flooding in from cybersecurity professionals who recognized quantum dynamics from industry conferences and government contracts. "This is disgusting," read one comment. "She's being harassed for banking while black." "Someone call the news," suggested another. "This is systematic discrimination." "I know this company," typed a verified account from Microsoft. "They handle our enterprise security protocols." Zara's encrypted phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. "Goldman Sachs moved meeting to 3 p.m. Need transfer authorization by 2:30. Federal Reserve Chairman's office called about tomorrow's testimony. TechCrunch wants interview about Pentagon contract." She silenced both phones, recognizing that the mounting external pressure would only complicate the current situation. Every minute of delay had consequences rippling through board meetings, government contracts, and media obligations. "I've been banking with Meridian for 6 years, Zara said, her voice maintaining its professional composure despite the systematic humiliation. "My account number is clearly visible on both the card and my identification. The account history should verify my identity." Patricia stepped closer, creating a united front with Marcus. "Ma'am, we have federal obligations to investigate suspicious transactions, especially large transfers from accounts we can't immediately verify. These procedures exist to protect both the bank and legitimate account holders." The phrase hung in the air like a judicial pronouncement. Patricia's tone suggested that Zara's legitimacy remained an open question, requiring investigation rather than simple verification. David Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably near the security desk. His expression revealed his recognition of the situation's true nature, but his employment required following management directives regardless of personal feelings. A businessman in an expensive suit approached the counter next to them, presenting only his driver's license for a $50,000 wire transfer. Patricia's colleague processed the transaction with efficient courtesy. No additional questions asked. No documentation demanded beyond standard identification. The contrast was stark and deliberate. Zara watched the parallel transaction unfold while she faced an inquisition for conducting identical business. "Look," Lady Marcus said, leaning back with theatrical exhaustion, "I deal with this stuff every day. People come in here with sob stories, fake documents, trying to charm their way into quick access to accounts that don't belong to them." He gestured at the crystal chandeliers and marble columns. "This is Meridian Financial Center, not some corner check-cashing place. We serve serious clients with serious money. Our security standards are necessarily high." Jessica's phone showed 500-600 viewers, with major news outlets beginning to embed her live feed. The hashtag Meridian discrimination was gaining momentum across social platforms as screenshots of the interaction spread through Twitter and Instagram. "We're going to need comprehensive employment verification." Patricia continued pulling out a thick folder of forms. Income documentation, tax returns from the past 3 years, detailed explanation of your business model, and proof of the source of any funds you claim to control. Zara's leather portfolio rested on the marble counter, but she hadn't opened it yet. Inside, congressional testimony documents waited alongside Pentagon security clearances and Federal Reserve Advisory Committee appointments. But these people saw only skin color and casual clothing, making assumptions based on nothing but prejudice. "The system shows irregularities with this account." Marcus lied smoothly, pretending to study his computer screen. "Multiple red flags that require additional verification procedures before any transactions can be authorized." Jessica's live stream hit 7,200 viewers. Comments poured in from people recognizing the systematic nature of what they were witnessing. Tech industry executives were sharing the stream, adding credibility to the discrimination claims. "Executive meeting in 45 minutes, announced the overhead speaker. "All department heads report to the conference room by 1:45 p.m. The countdown added urgency to an already tense situation. Patricia checked her Rolex nervously. She needed to prepare quarterly reports for the board meeting, but this incident was spiraling beyond her control. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to step aside while we process this verification," Patricia said, gesturing toward a small waiting area near the security desk. This investigation could take several hours. The suggestion was designed to humiliate, further forcing Zara to wait like a suspect while legitimate customers conducted their business efficiently. The psychological manipulation was transparent but effective. David Rodriguez approached with obvious reluctance. "Ma'am, I need to inform you that extended account verification procedures may require additional documentation that you might not have readily available." His tone carried an apology. His position wouldn't allow him to voice directly. Years of witnessing similar incidents had taught him to recognize institutional bias, but his mortgage payments depended on following management directives. Jessica's live stream showed 800 viewers now, with comments pouring in from financial industry insiders who understood the broader implications of systematic discrimination in banking services. Zara's portfolio contained documents that could resolve the situation instantly, but she recognized the value of letting the institutional bias fully reveal itself before playing her cards. Every moment of discrimination was being documented for regulatory review. "Executive meeting in 30 minutes," crackled through the overhead speakers. "Final preparation phase for all managers." Patricia's nervous energy was becoming visible. The quarterly board meeting would determine her promotion prospects, but this situation threatened to overshadow months of careful career management. Marcus continued his performance for the growing audience. "These identity theft schemes are incredibly sophisticated," he announced loudly. "Criminals invest months creating false histories, fake websites, counterfeit documentation. The goal is always the same: quick access to accounts containing other people's money." But none of them suspected what was coming next. The documents in Zara's portfolio would soon reveal that they'd been harassing not just a customer, but the person whose company's success had made their own careers possible. Security. We have a situation. Someone's trying to access business accounts with fraudulent documentation. Marcus Webb's voice carried across the marble lobby of Meridian Financial Center like a prosecutor announcing charges. He held his desk phone with theatrical authority, his eyes never leaving Zara Williams as she stood calmly at the business banking counter. Her MIT hoodie, a stark contrast to the corporate luxury surrounding them. David Rodriguez approached with measured steps, his security uniform pressed, but his expression uncomfortable. 10 years of banking security had taught him to recognize the difference between legitimate threats and institutional bias disguised as vigilance. This situation felt wrong from every angle. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step back from the counter while we sort this out," David said quietly, his tone apologetic, despite the official nature of his request. He positioned himself between Zara and the banking stations, but his body language suggested reluctance rather than authority. Jessica Chen's livestream had reached 12,000 viewers, with comments flooding in faster than human eyes could track. Tech industry insiders were recognizing quantum dynamics from recent headlines about government cybersecurity contracts. The hashtag quantum banking was trending nationally. "This is insane," typed a verified account from IBM. QDS just secured the Pentagon's new infrastructure protection contract. "I was at her MIT commencement speech last year," commented another viewer. "She's worth more than most banks. Someone needs to call corporate," suggested a banking industry insider. "This is about to become a massive liability issue." Patricia Hendricks gestured toward her glass office with practiced authority. "Ma'am, perhaps we could continue this conversation privately. These verification procedures don't need to be conducted in the main lobby." The suggestion was designed to remove Zara from the growing audience of witnesses and recording devices. Patricia had spent 15 years managing potential public relations disasters, and she recognized the escalating risk of viral documentation. "I prefer transparency in banking transactions," Zara replied calmly, her voice carrying a quality that made several nearby customers pause their own business. "If these are standard verification procedures, they shouldn't require privacy." Her phone buzzed insistently against her leg. The caller ID showed Goldman Sachs, "Merger discussion urgent." She declined the call, noting the timestamp 1:47 p.m. The Goldman meeting had been moved to accommodate her schedule, but her schedule was being dictated by institutional discrimination. Marcus returned from his phone consultation with renewed confidence. "Corporate security confirms that we're dealing with a sophisticated identity theft operation," he announced to the assembled crowd. "These criminals research legitimate companies online, create fake business cards, even study industry terminology to sound credible." The performance was convincing to customers unfamiliar with the actual tech industry. But Jessica's live stream audience included cybersecurity professionals who recognized the absurdity of Marcus's claims. QDS just testified before Congress last month, typed a verified DoD contractor. "This banker is about to become a case study in discrimination. She's literally on the Federal Reserve's Technology Advisory Board," added another comment from a financial services insider. Zara reached into her laptop bag, retrieving her phone to check the mounting stack of urgent messages. Her assistant had sent increasingly frantic texts about postponed meetings, delayed authorizations, and media requests that couldn't wait much longer. "Board meeting in 20 minutes. Need your approval for quarterly presentation." Fed chairman's office called 3 times about tomorrow's testimony. Forbes moved up cover story deadline photographer waiting at office. Pentagon wants conference call about infrastructure protection protocols. Each message represented millions of dollars in contracts, government relationships, and business opportunities, being impacted by the systematic discrimination playing out in Meridian's lobby. Marcus noticed her phone activity and made another assumption. Ma'am, contacting accomplices won't change our verification requirements. These organized fraud rings often use multiple people to create pressure and confusion. A well-dressed elderly woman near the investment accounts desk nodded approvingly. Better safe than sorry, she murmured to her companion. You never know who's trying to take advantage these days. But a young black professional who'd been waiting for service stepped forward. This is ridiculous, he said, his voice carrying the frustration of someone who'd experienced similar treatment. She has proper identification and bank cards. What more verification do you need, sir? Please don't interfere with bank security procedures, Patricia warned. We have federal obligations to investigate suspicious transactions. Customer safety requires diligent verification protocols. The young professional pulled out his own phone, joining Jessica's documentation of the systematic bias. His recording would later become crucial evidence in federal discrimination investigations. David Rodriguez shifted between his official duties and his personal recognition of injustice. Ma'am, I want you to know that not everyone here agrees with these enhanced procedures, he said quietly, his words carefully chosen to avoid directly challenging his supervisors while acknowledging the obvious discrimination. Officer Rodriguez, please maintain professional boundaries, Patricia snapped. Your job is security, not social commentary. Jessica's live stream had reached 18,000 viewers, with major news outlets beginning to embed the feed into their breaking news coverage. CNN's tech correspondent was tweeting about the incident, while MSNBC's financial analyst was preparing a segment on banking discrimination. Zara's encrypted government phone buzzed with a classified message from the National Security Agency. The irony wasn't lost on her. Federal agencies were trying to reach her, while a bank questioned her identity and legitimacy. I have a question about these enhanced verification procedures, Zara said, her tone remaining professional, despite 40 minutes of systematic humiliation. Could you show me the written policy that requires this level of scrutiny for routine business transactions? Marcus and Patricia exchanged glances. No such written policy existed, because federal law prohibited the discriminatory practices they were implementing based on racial assumptions. Our security protocols are proprietary, Marcus replied, falling back on corporate language designed to avoid specificity. We can't share internal procedures for obvious security reasons. Then perhaps you could explain why that gentleman's $50,000 wire transfer required only a driver's license, while my account access requires employment verification, tax returns, and detailed explanations. The question hung unanswered. The parallel transaction had been processed efficiently, while Zara faced an inquisition for conducting identical business. The contrast was documented on multiple recording devices. A group of young tech entrepreneurs entered the bank, immediately drawn to the commotion. One of them, an Asian American woman in her 30s, recognized what was happening and started her own recording. Are you seriously harassing this woman over a banking transaction? She challenged. This is 2024, not 1964. Ma'am, please don't interfere with legitimate security procedures, Patricia replied tersely. We have the right to verify large transactions regardless of customer demographics. Show me where she requested a large transaction, the woman demanded. I heard her ask for routine account access. Where's the security threat that justifies this interrogation? Marcus's face flushed with anger. These people always stick together, he muttered loud enough for the microphones to capture. They create scenes to pressure us into bypassing security protocols. The comment was racist, explicit, and recorded by multiple devices. Jessica's live stream erupted with outrage as viewers recognized the mask of professionalism slipping to reveal underlying bias. Executive meeting in 15 minutes, announced the overhead speaker. All department heads report to conference room immediately. Patricia checked her watch with growing anxiety. The quarterly board meeting would determine her career trajectory. But this situation was consuming the time she needed for final preparations. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to wait while we complete our comprehensive verification process," Patricia announced. This investigation could take several hours, possibly extending into tomorrow. The threat was transparent: submit to humiliation or be denied basic banking services. But Zara's calm expression never wavered, even as the institutional weight of discrimination pressed down around her. Zara's portfolio rested on the marble counter, its contents capable of resolving the situation instantly. But she recognized the value of allowing the discrimination to fully reveal itself for regulatory documentation and legal evidence. A security camera mounted above the banking stations captured every moment of the systematic bias. The footage would later become crucial evidence in congressional hearings about financial industry discrimination. "I notice your verification requirements seem selective." Zara observed her legal training evident in the carefully chosen words. "Could you explain the criteria that determine which customers face enhanced scrutiny?" The question was a legal trap. Any honest answer would admit to discriminatory profiling, while evasion would demonstrate awareness of illegal practices. Marcus fumbled for corporate language. "We use sophisticated risk assessment algorithms that analyze multiple factors to determine appropriate verification levels." "Could you show me these algorithms?" "As a cybersecurity professional, I'm curious about the technical implementation of bias detection systems." The technical challenge exposed Marcus's complete ignorance about the systems he claimed to understand. His 3 years of banking experience had taught him to recognize demographics, not technology. Jessica's live stream had reached 24,000 viewers, with international banking publications beginning to analyze the regulatory implications. The European Union's Financial Oversight Committee was already citing the incident in discussions about American banking discrimination. Zara's phone showed 17 missed calls from government agencies, business partners, and media outlets. Each delayed response had consequences rippling through federal contracts, merger negotiations, and congressional testimony schedules. "Ma'am, I'm required to inform you that continued account access delays may impact any scheduled business activities," David Rodriguez said carefully. His words carried a warning. His position didn't allow him to state directly. "Officer Rodriguez, please limit your communication to security-related matters," Patricia snapped. She recognized that David's sympathy was undermining their discrimination narrative. A text message from Zara's assistant appeared on her phone screen. "MIT called about honorary doctorate ceremony next week. Time magazine wants to confirm Person of the Year interview. Federal Reserve needs testimony notes for tomorrow's hearing." The mounting external pressure was documented by Jessica's camera, creating a real-time record of the professional obligations being disrupted by institutional bias. The longer this verification takes, the more suspicious it becomes. Marcus observed, trying to turn Zara's external commitments into evidence of fraud. Legitimate business owners don't have dozens of urgent calls and meetings. That's classic pressure tactics used by criminal organizations. His interpretation revealed the depths of his ignorance about high-level business operations, but it also demonstrated how discrimination could twist any evidence to support preconceived conclusions. The lobby clock showed 1:52 p.m. Every minute of delay had exponential consequences for someone operating at Zara's level of business and government engagement. "Executive meeting in 8 minutes," crackled through the speakers. "Final call for all department heads." Patricia's nervous energy was becoming visible to everyone in the lobby. Her career depended on the quarterly presentation, but this discrimination incident threatened to overshadow months of careful preparation. "Perhaps we should expedite this verification," suggested David Rodriguez, recognizing the mounting crisis. "The documentation appears legitimate, and the account history should be easily verifiable." Officer Rodriguez. I'll determine the appropriate verification timeline, Patricia replied sharply. Your job is security assistance, not banking policy. But Patricia's confidence was cracking under the pressure of viral documentation, mounting external calls, and the approaching board meeting deadline. Zara finally reached for her portfolio, her movements deliberate and controlled. The lobby fell silent as customers and employees sensed a shift in the power dynamics. Since you insist on comprehensive verification, Zara said quietly, perhaps it's time to examine exactly who you're dealing with. Her words carried a new quality that made everyone in the marble lobby lean forward. The careful documentation of discrimination was about to give way to revelation that would change everything. Let me handle this. I've dealt with these elaborate identity theft schemes before. Jonathan Hayes burst through the executive elevator doors, his $3,000 suit and 25 years of regional banking authority immediately commanding the marble lobby's attention. Someone from corporate had called about a viral social media situation requiring immediate damage control, and Jonathan approached every crisis with the confidence of someone who'd built his reputation on decisive leadership. His eyes swept the scene quickly. Black woman at the business counter, crowd of onlookers, phones recording everything, trending hashtags visible on multiple screens. Jonathan had handled situations like this before, or at least situations he assumed were like this. What exactly is the nature of this security concern? Jonathan demanded, his voice carrying the weight of someone accustomed to ending problems through executive authority. He positioned himself between Zara and the growing crowd of witnesses, his body language designed to project control and resolution. Marcus Webb stepped forward eagerly, recognizing the opportunity to demonstrate his vigilance to senior management. Mr. Hayes, we have a sophisticated fraud attempt in progress. This individual claims to own a technology company and is trying to access business accounts with questionable documentation. Jonathan nodded gravely, his expression shifting into crisis management mode. He'd built his career on protecting Meridian Financial from exactly these kinds of elaborate schemes, and his rapid response had earned him recognition from corporate leadership. Ma'am, I'm Jonathan Hayes, Regional Director for Meridian Financial, he announced formally, his tone carrying practiced authority. I understand there's been some confusion about account verification procedures, but I assure you, we're simply following federal requirements for transaction security. Jessica Chen's live stream had reached 31,000 viewers, with major news organizations embedding the feed directly into their websites. Comments streamed past faster than human eyes could read, but the pattern was clear. Tech industry insiders, recognizing quantum dynamics from recent congressional testimony and Pentagon contracts. QDS handles cybersecurity for the Federal Reserve, typed a verified account from the Treasury Department. This banker is about to become a case study in discrimination. She testified before Senate Intelligence Committee last month, added another government contractor. Her security clearance is higher than most generals. Zara remained composed, but Jessica's camera caught the slight tightening around her eyes as another executive joined the discrimination parade. Mr. Hayes, I'm simply trying to conduct routine business with accounts I've maintained at this institution for 6 years. These elaborate identity theft operations are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Jonathan continued loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. Criminals research legitimate companies, create fake websites, even study industry terminology to sound credible when they attempt to access accounts containing other people's money. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so painful. Jonathan was describing criminal behavior while discussing someone whose company had literally written the cybersecurity protocols protecting his own bank's digital infrastructure. David Rodriguez stood nearby his security uniform, making him complicit in what was clearly becoming a systematically racist interrogation. His discomfort was visible to anyone watching, but his employment required following management directives, regardless of personal feelings. "Sir, perhaps we should move this discussion to a private office," David suggested, quietly trying to reduce the public spectacle and limit the viral documentation. "Some transactions require confidential handling." "No, Officer Rodriguez," Jonathan replied firmly. "Transparency is important in fraud investigations. Other customers should see how seriously Meridian Financial takes security protocols." His decision to maintain public visibility was strategically disastrous. Every moment of discrimination was being documented by multiple recording devices and broadcast to rapidly growing audiences. A well-dressed elderly woman approached the counter, clearly frustrated by the delay in banking services. "Excuse me, I need to complete a wire transfer before the international markets close." "Ma'am, we're dealing with a security situation," Marcus explained importantly. "This person is attempting to access business accounts with fraudulent documentation. We need to resolve this before normal banking operations can continue." The elderly customer looked at Zara with obvious suspicion, her assumption clear without requiring explicit statement. "Well, I suppose you have to be careful these days. All sorts of people are trying to take advantage of sophisticated banking systems." But another voice cut through the discriminatory consensus. A young black professional who'd been watching from the loan department stepped forward with visible anger. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice carrying the frustration of someone who'd experienced similar treatment countless times. "She has proper identification and bank cards. She's answered every question you've asked. What exactly are you investigating besides the color of her skin? Sir, please don't interfere with legitimate bank security procedures." Patricia warned, her tone sharp with authority. "We have federal obligations to investigate suspicious transactions, and customer interference compromises our ability to conduct proper verification." The young professional pulled out his phone, joining Jessica's documentation of systematic bias. "I'm recording this for my own protection," he announced. "When discrimination lawsuits start flying, I want evidence of how this bank treats black customers." Jonathan's crisis management training hadn't prepared him for multiple recording devices and real-time social media documentation. Traditional damage control required privacy and controlled messaging. But this situation was exploding across platforms faster than corporate communications could respond. "I'm going to need comprehensive employment verification," Jonathan announced, pulling out a thick packet of forms that had never been required for white customers conducting identical transactions. Tax returns, business registration documents, proof of income sources, and detailed affidavits explaining the purpose of any requested transactions. Zara's phone buzzed insistently with calls from her assistant board members and government agencies. Each ignored call represented cascading consequences through business relationships that generated billions in economic activity. Board meeting moved to 2:15 p.m. Need immediate authorization for quarterly presentation. Goldman Sachs merger discussion postponed pending your availability. Federal Reserve Chairman's office requires confirmation for tomorrow's cybersecurity testimony. Pentagon requesting status update on infrastructure protection protocols. She silenced both phones, recognizing that external pressure would only complicate the current discrimination without resolving its fundamental causes. This is standard procedure for large transactions, Jonathan continued, though everyone knew it wasn't. We're protecting both Meridian Financial and legitimate account holders from potential fraud schemes that could result in significant financial losses. Jessica's livestream audience had grown to 38,000 viewers, with backup streams running across multiple platforms. The story was being covered by CNN, MSNBC, BBC, and international outlets. Banking industry publications were scrambling to understand the regulatory implications. If asked about your employer, what would you tell investigators? Jonathan added his tone, suggesting that Zara's answers would be evaluated for credibility, rather than simply recorded for verification. I'm self-employed, Zara replied calmly, her voice carrying the patience of someone accustomed to explaining complex business structures to people with limited understanding. Marcus snorted with derision. Self-employed. Right. Let me guess you're a consultant or entrepreneur with no verifiable income sources. That's what they all claim when they can't provide legitimate employment documentation. The dismissive response revealed the depth of Marcus's ignorance about modern business structures, particularly in technology sectors, where self-employment often indicated exceptional success rather than lack of credentials. Quantum Dynamics Solutions is a cybersecurity consulting firm. Zara explained, her tone remaining professional, despite the mounting humiliation. We specialize in financial infrastructure protection for government agencies and Fortune 500 companies. Jonathan leaned forward with practiced skepticism. Financial infrastructure protection. That sounds very sophisticated for someone who can't provide basic employment verification. What specific services does this alleged company actually provide? The question revealed Jonathan's complete ignorance about cybersecurity industries, while simultaneously challenging Zara to prove her expertise to people incapable of evaluating her answers. We develop encryption protocols, design intrusion detection systems, and provide compliance consulting for federal banking regulations, Zara replied. Our clients include the Department of Defense Federal Reserve and several major financial institutions. Anyone can memorize technical terminology, Marcus interjected. The sophisticated scammers always research industry language to sound credible. But when you dig deeper, the facade always collapses. Jessica's live stream comments exploded with outrage from cybersecurity professionals who recognized the absurdity of Marcus's claims. She literally wrote the textbook on financial encryption protocols. QDS secured my company's infrastructure last year, saved us $50 million in potential breaches. This woman has more security clearances than most Pentagon officials. A group of young tech entrepreneurs had gathered near the scene, drawn by the viral hashtags, and recognizing the systematic discrimination playing out in real time. Their presence added to the growing audience of witnesses documenting institutional bias. Are you seriously questioning someone's legitimacy based on their appearance? Challenged one of them, a young Asian woman whose startup had recently received venture capital funding. This is exactly the kind of discrimination that keeps diverse entrepreneurs out of traditional banking. Ma'am, please don't interfere with our investigation, Jonathan replied curtly. We have sophisticated fraud detection protocols that analyze multiple risk factors to determine appropriate verification procedures. Show me these protocols, the entrepreneur demanded. I want to see the written policies that justify this level of scrutiny for routine banking transactions. The challenge exposed the absence of any legitimate policy justifying the discriminatory treatment. Jonathan's protocols existed only in the assumptions and biases of staff members who saw skin color as a security threat. Zara's portfolio sat on the marble counter, its contents capable of ending the discrimination instantly. But she recognized the value of allowing the institutional bias to fully reveal itself for legal documentation and regulatory evidence. Ma'am, we're also going to need to contact references who can verify your business claims, Jonathan added. Legitimate companies have verifiable contacts, suppliers, clients, business partners who can confirm your operational status. The irony was staggering. Zara's references included federal agency directors, Fortune 500 CEOs, and congressional committee chairs, but Jonathan assumed she would be unable to provide credible contacts. Executive meeting in 5 minutes, announced the overhead speaker. Final call for all department heads. The countdown was creating visible stress for Patricia and Jonathan, who needed to present quarterly reports that would determine their career advancement. But the discrimination incident was consuming preparation time and creating potential liability issues. Mr. Hayes, perhaps we should expedite this verification process, suggested David Rodriguez, recognizing the mounting crisis. The documentation appears legitimate, and extended delays are creating unnecessary complications. Officer Rodriguez, I'll determine the appropriate investigation timeline, Jonathan replied sharply. Your job is security assistance, not banking policy guidance. But Jonathan's confidence was beginning to crack under the pressure of viral documentation, mounting external attention, and approaching deadline pressures. Zara's phone showed 23 missed calls from increasingly high-level sources. The Federal Reserve Chairman's office had called 4 times. The Pentagon's Cybersecurity Division was requesting immediate conference calls. Goldman Sachs had postponed a merger discussion worth $400 million. The longer this verification takes, the more complicated it becomes, Jonathan observed, trying to turn Zara's external obligations into evidence of suspicious activity. Legitimate business owners don't have dozens of urgent government calls. That's typical pressure tactics used by organized fraud operations. His interpretation demonstrated how discrimination could twist any evidence to support preconceived conclusions, but it also revealed his complete ignorance about high-level business and government relationships. Jessica's livestream had reached 45,000 viewers, with international banking oversight committees monitoring the incident for regulatory compliance violations. The story was spreading beyond entertainment into serious policy discussions about systematic discrimination in financial services. The lobby clock showed 2:07 p.m. 8 minutes until the executive meeting that would determine careers and quarterly evaluations. The pressure was mounting on everyone involved, but Zara remained calm, while bank employees grew increasingly frantic. Perhaps it's time to examine exactly what kind of verification you really need, Zara said quietly, her hand moving toward the portfolio that contained documents capable of ending careers and triggering federal investigations. The marble lobby fell silent as everyone sensed the approaching shift in power dynamics. The careful documentation of discrimination was about to give way to revelations that would transform victim into authority and expose the true cost of institutional bias. Ms. Williams, I assure you this is just a misunderstanding. Perhaps we can resolve this quietly in my office. Margaret Sterling's voice carried the practiced authority of someone who'd spent 28 years climbing through banking hierarchies to reach the position of bank president. She emerged from the executive elevator like a general surveying a battlefield, her Armani suit and commanding presence immediately shifting the lobby's power dynamics. Her assistant had briefed her during the elevator ride about the viral social media situation, but seeing the crisis firsthand still left her calculating the potential damage to Meridian Financial's reputation and her own career trajectory. Mr. Hayes, Ms. Hendricks, Margaret said, her tone carrying the unmistakable weight of executive displeasure. Perhaps you could brief me on the current situation. Jonathan Hayes straightened, with the reflexive deference of middle management confronting senior authority. Ms. Sterling, we're investigating a potential fraud case involving sophisticated identity theft and attempted account access using counterfeit documentation. Margaret's eyes swept the scene with practiced efficiency. Black woman at the counter. Multiple recording devices, growing crowd of witnesses, trending hashtags visible on smartphone screens throughout the lobby. Her crisis management training recognized the makings of a public relations disaster. Ma'am, I want to personally ensure that this situation is resolved appropriately, Margaret said, addressing Zara with the careful tone of someone trying to diffuse potential legal explosions. Meridian Financial values. All our customers and any perception of unfair treatment would be completely contrary to our institutional values. The corporate language was designed to acknowledge problems without admitting fault, creating space for negotiated resolution while avoiding liability admissions that could be used in discrimination lawsuits. Jessica Chen's live stream had reached 52,000 viewers, with major news networks providing split-screen coverage of the banking discrimination incident. The hashtag Meridian Bias was trending globally as international observers watched American financial institutions grapple with systematic racism in real time. "This is insane," commented a verified account from the NAACP. 2024. And banks still treating black customers like criminals. "Someone needs to call federal regulators," suggested a banking industry insider. "This is textbook discrimination with perfect documentation." "QDS handles my company's cybersecurity," typed a Fortune 500 CEO. "These bankers have no idea who they're harassing." Zara remained positioned at the business banking counter, her portfolio still closed, but her calm demeanor suggesting someone accustomed to handling crisis situations with strategic patience. "Ms. Sterling, I appreciate your intervention, but I'm concerned about the systematic nature of what I've experienced here," Zara replied, her tone carrying the measured authority of someone with extensive boardroom experience. "The level of scrutiny I've faced seems inconsistent with standard banking procedures." Margaret's internal alarm bells were ringing. The woman's vocabulary, composure, and strategic thinking suggested someone with significant business experience and potential legal sophistication. "This wasn't a typical customer service complaint. I want to assure you that Meridian Financial serves customers from all backgrounds with equal respect and attention." Margaret continued, her words carefully chosen for the recording devices documenting every statement. "If our procedures have seemed excessive, I'd like to understand the specific concerns and address them immediately." The diplomatic language acknowledged potential problems while avoiding explicit admissions of discriminatory treatment. Margaret had navigated countless potential lawsuits through careful communication that expressed concern without accepting liability. Marcus Webb stood nearby, his earlier confidence evaporating as he recognized that senior management was questioning his judgment rather than supporting his security vigilance. His 3 years of banking experience suddenly seemed inadequate for the corporate politics unfolding around him. "Ms. Sterling, this individual has been unable to provide adequate verification for business account access." Marcus explained, his voice carrying less authority than it had 30 minutes earlier. "The documentation appears sophisticated, but our fraud detection protocols identified multiple red flags." Margaret's experienced eye immediately recognized that Marcus was lying about fraud detection protocols. Meridian's actual systems would have verified Zara's account status within seconds, not triggered extended investigation procedures. "Could you show me these fraud detection alerts?" Margaret asked, her tone carrying the subtle threat of someone accustomed to exposing subordinate incompetence. "I'd like to review the specific risk factors that justified enhanced verification procedures." Marcus fumbled with his computer terminal, unable to produce any legitimate alerts, because none existed. His discrimination had been based on visual assumptions rather than systematic analysis. David Rodriguez stepped forward with obvious relief at Margaret's intervention. "Ms. Sterling, I've been uncomfortable with the extended verification requirements. The customer has provided proper identification and banking credentials that should be sufficient for routine account access." His statement created clear distance between security protocols and discriminatory banking practices, protecting himself while exposing the bias of his supervisors. "Officer Rodriguez, thank you for that assessment," Margaret replied, recognizing the value of having security personnel acknowledge the excessive nature of the verification demands. Patricia Hendricks realized that her career was hanging in the balance. The quarterly board meeting was scheduled to begin in minutes, and her promotion prospects depended on demonstrating sound judgment rather than creating viral discrimination incidents. "Ms. Sterling, we were simply following enhanced security protocols for large transaction requests," Patricia said, attempting to frame discrimination as cautious banking practices. "What large transaction request?" Margaret asked sharply, recognizing another lie designed to justify unjustifiable treatment. "My understanding is that this customer requested routine account access, not unusual transactions requiring special procedures. The question exposed Patricia's fabrication and demonstrated that the discrimination had been based on assumptions rather than actual banking activities. Zara's phone buzzed with increasingly urgent messages from her assistant executive board meeting, postponed 20 minutes pending your authorization. Goldman Sachs requesting immediate conference call about delayed merger discussions. Federal Reserve Chairman's office needs confirmation for tomorrow's cybersecurity testimony. Pentagon Cybersecurity Division requesting status update on infrastructure protection protocols. Each delayed response had exponential consequences through business relationships that generated billions in economic activity and affected national security infrastructure. Ms. Williams, I notice you've been receiving numerous business calls. Margaret observed her banking experience, recognizing the signs of high-level professional obligations. Perhaps you could help me understand the nature of your business activities so we can resolve this situation appropriately. The question was carefully phrased to gather information without continuing the discriminatory interrogation that had characterized the previous hour of harassment. I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics Solutions, Zara replied calmly. We're a cybersecurity consulting firm, specializing in financial infrastructure protection for government agencies and Fortune 500 companies. Margaret's expression shifted slightly as recognition dawned. Quantum Dynamics was a name she'd seen in industry publications and government contract announcements. The company had been featured in banking journals for innovative security protocols. Quantum Dynamics. Margaret repeated slowly, her corporate memory beginning to connect dots that her subordinates had completely missed. I believe I've seen that company name in Federal Reserve Technology Advisory Committee announcements. The comment sent visible alarm through Marcus, Patricia, and Jonathan, as they realized they might have been harassing someone with significant government and industry connections. We do work with the Federal Reserve on cybersecurity compliance. Zara confirmed, her tone suggesting that such relationships were routine rather than exceptional, along with the Department of Defense Treasury Department and several major financial institutions. Jessica's live stream erupted with comments from government contractors and cybersecurity professionals who recognized the magnitude of the discrimination. She has higher security clearance than most senators. QDS literally writes the protocols that protect federal banking systems. This woman advises Congress on financial cybersecurity policy. Margaret's crisis management training was activating as she calculated the potential regulatory and legal exposure. Discriminating against a government contractor with federal security clearances could trigger investigations from multiple agencies. Ms. Williams, I want to personally apologize for any inconvenience our verification procedures may have caused. Margaret said, her tone shifting toward damage control mode. Perhaps we could expedite your banking needs and schedule a follow-up discussion about how to prevent similar misunderstandings. The diplomatic language acknowledged problems while avoiding explicit admissions of discriminatory treatment. But the shift in tone was obvious to everyone in the lobby. I appreciate your concern, Ms. Sterling, but I'm interested in understanding the systematic issues that created this situation. Zara replied, her legal training evident in the carefully chosen words. The treatment I've received suggests institutional problems rather than individual misunderstandings. The phrase institutional problems carried legal implications that made Margaret's stomach tighten. Systematic discrimination claims could trigger federal investigations, class action lawsuits, and regulatory sanctions that could cost hundreds of millions in penalties and legal fees. Zara's encrypted government phone buzzed with a classified message from the National Security Agency. The irony was overwhelming. Federal agencies were trying to reach her while bank employees questioned her legitimacy and security clearance. Executive meeting begins now, announced the overhead speaker. All department heads report to conference room immediately. The deadline pressure was creating visible stress among bank management, who needed to present quarterly reports while managing a viral discrimination crisis that threatened to overshadow months of careful preparation. Ms. Sterling, perhaps we should conclude this verification process, suggested David Rodriguez, recognizing that continued delays were only making the situation worse for everyone involved. Officer Rodriguez. I agree, Margaret replied, understanding that ending the discrimination was more important than saving face for subordinates who had created the crisis through their own bias. But Zara wasn't finished. The systematic nature of the discrimination required systematic accountability, not just individual resolution of her immediate banking needs. Before we conclude, I'd like to understand the policies that justified the treatment I've received. Zara said, her tone carrying the authority of someone accustomed to demanding institutional accountability. If these are standard procedures, they should be documented and consistently applied. The challenge was a legal trap. Any documented policies would expose systematic discrimination, while the absence of policies would demonstrate that the treatment had been based on racial bias, rather than legitimate security concerns. Margaret realized that they were dealing with someone who understood exactly how to expose institutional discrimination through careful questioning and documentation. This wasn't just a customer service complaint. It was a strategic, legal challenge. Ms. Williams. I believe there may have been some individual judgment errors rather than systematic policy issues, Margaret replied carefully, trying to frame the discrimination as isolated incidents rather than institutional practices. Individual errors that coincidentally affected a black customer seeking routine banking services. Zara asked her question, carrying the weight of legal precedent and regulatory oversight. While white customers received immediate assistance for identical requests, the parallel transactions had been documented by multiple recording devices, creating irrefutable evidence of discriminatory treatment that no amount of corporate language could explain away. Jessica's live stream had reached 67,000 viewers, with international banking regulators monitoring the incident for compliance violations. The European Union's Financial Oversight Committee was already citing the incident in discussions about American banking discrimination. Margaret recognized that they were past the point of quiet resolution. The viral documentation had created permanent evidence that would be analyzed by regulators, lawyers, and congressional committees, regardless of how the immediate situation was resolved. Perhaps we should discuss this matter more comprehensively, Margaret said, recognizing that damage control required acknowledging the severity of what had occurred, rather than minimizing obvious discrimination. But Zara was reaching for her portfolio, her movements deliberate and controlled. The lobby fell silent as customers and employees sensed that the power dynamics were about to shift dramatically. Ms. Sterling, since your institution has demanded comprehensive verification, perhaps it's time to examine exactly who has been subjected to this discrimination, Zara said quietly, her words carrying a new quality that made everyone lean forward. The careful documentation of institutional bias was about to give way to revelations that would transform the entire banking relationship and expose the true cost of systematic discrimination. Since you insist on verification, let me show you exactly who you're dealing with. Zara Williams's voice carried a new quality that made the marble lobby of Meridian Financial Center fall into expectant silence. Her movements were deliberate and controlled as she opened her leather portfolio for the first time in over an hour of systematic discrimination, revealing documents that would soon reshape everything the bank employees thought they understood about power and authority. The digital clock above the executive banking stations showed 2:18 p.m. Jessica Chen's live stream had reached 74,000 viewers, with major news organizations embedding the feed directly into their breaking news coverage. Comments poured in from cybersecurity professionals, government contractors, and financial industry insiders who were beginning to recognize the magnitude of the institutional bias playing out in real time. Margaret Sterling stood with practiced composure, but her 28 years of banking experience had taught her to recognize when situations were moving beyond conventional damage control. The woman in the MIT hoodie was demonstrating strategic patience and legal sophistication that suggested significant business experience and potential regulatory connections. Ms. Williams, I want to assure you that we're committed to resolving this situation appropriately. Margaret said, her tone carefully balanced between corporate authority and diplomatic flexibility. If there have been procedural inconsistencies, I'm prepared to address them immediately. Zara withdrew the first document from her portfolio, a business card with embossed lettering that caught the crystal chandelier's light. She placed it gently on the marble counter in front of Marcus Webb, who glanced at it with reflexive dismissiveness before the specific details began registering in his consciousness. Zara Williams, founder and Chief Executive Officer, Quantum Dynamics Solutions. Marcus read aloud, his voice carrying less skepticism than it had carried an hour earlier. The quality of the paper, the precision of the embossing, and the sophisticated design suggested legitimate corporate identity rather than counterfeit documentation. But Marcus's discrimination had become too invested to abandon easily. Business cards can be printed by anyone, he said, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The sophisticated fraud operations invest in high-quality materials to create credibility. David Rodriguez stepped closer, examining the card with the professional attention his security training had taught him to apply to documentation. The corporate logo, font selection, and paper quality suggested legitimate business operations rather than criminal forgery. Margaret's experienced eye immediately recognized signs of authentic corporate identity. The business card's design elements and production quality indicated significant investment in professional branding, suggesting a company with substantial resources and operational legitimacy. Zara reached into her portfolio again, retrieving a second card that made Jonathan Hayes's eyes widen with recognition. This one bore the Federal Reserve's distinctive logo alongside legal text in precise corporate formatting. Federal Reserve, Technology Advisory Committee, Cybersecurity, Infrastructure, Protection Division. Jonathan read slowly, his voice carrying growing uncertainty. Principal Consultant for Financial Systems Security Assessment. The Federal Reserve appointment carried implications that made everyone in the lobby understand they were dealing with someone far beyond their original assumptions. Government advisory positions required extensive background checks, security clearances, and demonstrated expertise that couldn't be faked or purchased. Patricia Hendricks backed away from the counter as the reality of their mistake began crystallizing. Her 15 years of banking experience had taught her to recognize legitimate authority, and federal advisory appointments represented exactly the kind of institutional credibility that could destroy careers for discriminatory treatment. Anyone can create fake government documents, Marcus said weakly, but his voice carried no conviction. The precision of the federal logos, the specific committee nomenclature, and the professional formatting suggested authentic government credentials, rather than sophisticated counterfeiting. Jessica's live stream exploded with recognition from government contractors and cybersecurity professionals. She literally advises the Federal Reserve on banking security protocols. QDS wrote the cybersecurity standards that protect federal banking infrastructure. This woman has higher security clearance than most Pentagon officials. Someone needs to call corporate immediately. This is about to become a massive liability. Zara's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from the Treasury Department's Cybersecurity Division. The irony was overwhelming. Federal agencies were trying to coordinate with her, while bank employees questioned her legitimacy and government connections. Ms. Williams, I'm beginning to understand that there may have been some significant misassessments of your professional credentials, Margaret said carefully, her corporate training teaching her to acknowledge errors without admitting liability for discriminatory treatment. The misassessment seems to have been based on factors unrelated to my professional qualifications. Zara replied, her legal training evident in the precisely chosen words that highlighted the discriminatory nature of their assumptions. She reached into her portfolio again, retrieving congressional testimony documents that made Margaret's face go pale with recognition. The official letterhead committee seals and formal invitation language represented exactly the kind of government engagement that could trigger federal investigations for discriminatory treatment. Congressional testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee regarding cybersecurity infrastructure protection, Zara read from the official documents. Scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m. to discuss financial sector vulnerability assessment and federal protection protocols. The congressional testimony represented a level of government engagement that made discriminatory treatment a potential federal offense rather than simple customer service failure. Harassing someone scheduled to testify before Congress could trigger investigations from multiple agencies. Marcus Webb's face had gone ashen as he calculated the career implications of his hour-long harassment of someone with federal advisory responsibilities and congressional testimony obligations. His 3 years of banking experience suddenly seemed trivial compared to the institutional authority he'd been challenging. The Pentagon's Cybersecurity Division has been calling for the past hour. Zara continued, showing her phone's call log displaying repeated attempts from Department of Defense numbers. They're coordinating infrastructure protection protocols that I'm scheduled to present to the National Security Council next week. Each revelation carried exponential implications for the discrimination lawsuit that was certainly coming. Federal agencies didn't typically pursue civil rights violations with casual interest, especially when their own contractors and advisors were the victims of institutional bias. Jonathan Hayes fumbled with his computer terminal, finally attempting to verify Zara's account status through legitimate banking protocols rather than discriminatory assumptions. The screen displayed account information that made his hands tremble with recognition of his catastrophic mistake. The account shows significant activity, Jonathan said weakly, his voice barely audible as he confronted evidence of his discriminatory judgment. Multiple federal contractor payments, government agency transfers, Fortune 500 consulting fees. The account history revealed exactly the kind of high-level business relationships that Jonathan should have recognized from the beginning. Instead, he'd spent an hour assuming criminal activity based on nothing but racial bias. Zara's assistant had sent increasingly frantic messages about the cascading consequences of delayed authorizations. Goldman Sachs merger discussion postponed indefinitely, pending your availability. Federal Reserve Chairman's Office, requiring immediate confirmation for tomorrow's testimony. Pentagon requesting urgent conference call about infrastructure protection timeline. Congressional Intelligence Committee staff asking about testimony preparation status. Each delayed response represented millions of dollars in business relationships and national security obligations being disrupted by systematic discrimination at a regional bank branch. Ms. Williams, I want to personally apologize for the extended verification procedures, Margaret said, her tone shifting towards serious damage control as she calculated the potential regulatory and legal exposure. It's clear that our assessment of your credentials was inadequate. The diplomatic language acknowledged massive errors without explicitly admitting discriminatory treatment, but everyone in the lobby understood the subtext. Meridian Financial had spent over an hour harassing someone whose government relationships could trigger federal investigations. A group of tech entrepreneurs who'd been watching the incident began recognizing Zara from industry conferences and government cybersecurity panels. Their whispered conversations created a buzz of recognition that spread through the lobby as people realized they were witnessing discrimination against someone with significant public visibility. I know her from the MIT Technology Review Symposium, one of them said loud enough for Jessica's microphone to capture. She was the keynote speaker about federal cybersecurity policy. This bank has no idea who they've been harassing. The public recognition was being documented in real time, creating additional evidence that Meridian's discrimination had targeted someone with established public credibility and professional reputation. Zara reached into her portfolio one more time, retrieving a document that made Margaret Sterling's experienced eye widen with immediate recognition. The corporate letterhead, legal formatting, and official seals suggested exactly the kind of business relationship that could transform discrimination victims into institutional authorities. Ms. Sterling, perhaps we should discuss the broader business relationship between Quantum Dynamics Solutions and Meridian Financial Corporation. Zara said quietly, her words carrying implications that made the lobby fall silent with anticipation. The document in her hand bore Meridian's own corporate logo, alongside legal text that would soon reveal the ultimate irony of the discrimination she'd endured. The bank's systematic bias had been directed against someone whose business success was directly connected to their own institutional operations. Jessica's livestream had reached 89,000 viewers with international banking publications, analyzing the potential regulatory implications. Congressional staff members were monitoring the feed, recognizing the person whose testimony would shape federal cybersecurity policy within 18 hours. Executive meeting delayed pending resolution of lobby situation, announced the overhead speaker, indicating that senior management had recognized the crisis required immediate attention rather than routine quarterly presentations. Margaret Sterling realized that they were dealing with someone whose professional relationships and business connections could reshape Meridian Financial's entire regulatory standing. The discrimination wasn't just a customer service failure. It was a strategic disaster, with consequences extending far beyond individual careers. Perhaps we should examine the complete scope of our business relationship. Zara continued, her hand moving toward the final documents that would reveal the ultimate twist in an hour of systematic institutional bias. The marble lobby held its collective breath as everyone sensed that the power dynamics were about to shift in ways that no one had anticipated. The careful documentation of discrimination was about to give way to revelations that would transform victim into authority and expose the true cost of institutional racism in corporate America. You want to know about my business? I built this empire with my bare hands, while people like you told me I didn't belong. Zara Williams's voice carried a power that made the marble lobby of Meridian Financial Center vibrate with anticipation. Her words weren't shouted. They were delivered with the calm authority of someone revealing cards they'd held in reserve for exactly this moment. Jessica Chen's livestream had reached 127,000 viewers as the tension built toward revelations that would reshape everything the bank employees thought they understood about power authority and the cost of systematic discrimination. Margaret Sterling stood frozen as Zara reached into her portfolio for the final documents, her 28 years of banking experience suddenly inadequate for the crisis unfolding in real time. The woman in the MIT hoodie was about to reveal something that would either save careers or destroy them entirely. For the past hour, you've demanded verification of my identity, my business, my right to access financial services. Zara continued, her voice carrying the accumulated weight of decades spent proving herself to people who'd already decided she didn't belong. Let me give you the verification you've been requesting. She placed the first document on the marble counter with deliberate precision. The letterhead bore Meridian Financial Corporation's own logo, alongside legal text that made Margaret's face drain of color as recognition dawned like a nuclear sunrise. Merger agreement between Quantum Dynamics Solutions and Meridian Financial Corporation. Zara read aloud, her voice carrying across the silent lobby. Total acquisition value, $4.2 billion. Federal regulatory approval granted last Tuesday. Effective implementation next Monday morning. The words hit the assembled crowd like a physical force. Marcus Webb's mouth fell open, his business card slipping from nerveless fingers. Patricia Hendricks stumbled backward as if struck. Jonathan Hayes grabbed the edge of the counter for support as his legs threatened to give way. Jessica's live stream erupted. The viewer count jumped from 127,000 to 198,000 in 30 seconds as the implications ricocheted through social media. Comments flooded the screen faster than human comprehension. "Oh my God, she owns the bank. This is the most expensive customer service failure in history. These people just discriminated against their new owner. Plot twist of the century." David Rodriguez shook his head slowly, recognition dawning in his eyes. He'd seen Zara's photograph in corporate newsletters, annual reports, and merger announcement materials. The woman they'd been harassing for 90 minutes was literally about to become their ultimate supervisor. Quantum Dynamics Solutions. Zara continued opening her portfolio to reveal comprehensive documentation that made the scope of their mistake clear to everyone present. Specializes in cybersecurity infrastructure for financial institutions. Our client list includes J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America Wells Fargo, and as of last Tuesday's regulatory approval, Meridian Financial Corporation. She gestured toward the computer terminals, security cameras, and digital banking infrastructure surrounding them. The cybersecurity protocols protecting every transaction in this building, every customer database, every financial record, all designed, implemented, and maintained by my company. The irony was staggering and complete. They'd spent 90 minutes questioning the legitimacy of someone whose technology was literally protecting their ability to function as a financial institution. Margaret Sterling's crisis management training had prepared her for many scenarios, but not for discovering that a discrimination victim was actually the incoming owner of the entire banking corporation. Her mouth moved without sound as she calculated career implications that extended far beyond simple employment termination. The Federal Reserve Treasury Department and Office of the Comptroller of the Currency all approved this acquisition based on Quantum Dynamics' demonstrated expertise in financial cybersecurity. Zara explained her tone, carrying the authority of someone who'd navigated the highest levels of federal regulatory approval. She pulled out additional documents showing government endorsements that made everyone realize the magnitude of authority they'd been challenging. The Pentagon recommended our acquisition of Meridian Financial as part of critical infrastructure protection initiatives. Marcus Webb finally found his voice, though it cracked with desperation. "Ms. Williams, I had no idea. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. I was just following security protocols. Show me the security protocol that authorizes racial profiling." Zara challenged her legal training, evident in the precision of her language. "Point to the training manual that instructs employees to assume black customers are criminals until proven otherwise." The challenge hung unanswered because no such protocols existed in writing. Federal law prohibited exactly the discriminatory practices they'd been implementing based on nothing but racist assumptions. The systematic nature of today's discrimination suggests institutional problems rather than individual mistakes. Zara continued consulting documents that outlined the comprehensive transformation she'd planned for Meridian Financial's operations, which is precisely why Quantum Dynamics acquired this institution to implement the cultural and procedural changes necessary for 21st century banking excellence. Jessica's live stream had reached 234,000 viewers, with major news networks providing dedicated coverage of the most expensive customer service failure in banking history. Congressional staff members were monitoring the feed, recognizing implications for upcoming cybersecurity hearings. Our due diligence process identified systematic bias in Meridian's customer service protocols, Zara explained, retrieving a thick analysis report that made Patricia realize they'd been audited without knowing it. Today's interaction provided perfect confirmation of the cultural problems we intended to address through new ownership. The revelation transformed their discrimination from isolated incident into documented evidence of institutional failure that justified federal intervention and corporate takeover. Jonathan Hayes attempted one final defense. "Ms. Williams, surely you understand that we were simply being cautious about security. These verification procedures protect all customers from potential fraud." Mr. Hayes: "I've conducted identical transactions at 17 different Meridian branches over the past 6 months." Zara replied her systematic documentation, revealing the scope of her strategic planning. "Your branch was the only location that required enhanced verification for a Black customer conducting routine business. The comparative data was devastating." Zara had methodically tested Meridian's customer service protocols across their entire regional network, creating irrefutable evidence of discriminatory practices that federal regulators would soon be examining in detail. The other 16 branches processed identical transactions with minimal verification. She continued, "Professional courtesy, efficient service, no questions about my legitimacy or right to access financial services." The contrast with today's treatment reveals systematic bias rather than uniform security standards. Margaret Sterling realized they were dealing with someone who'd approached their discrimination not as an isolated victim, but as a strategic analyst gathering evidence for comprehensive institutional change. Federal banking regulations require member institutions to serve all customers with equal respect and attention. Zara explained, consulting legal documents that demonstrated her thorough understanding of regulatory compliance. Systematic discrimination violations can trigger complete operational review and potential charter revocation. The legal threats weren't empty. Zara's background as a corporate attorney before founding Quantum Dynamics meant she understood banking law better than most federal regulators, and her documentation would provide perfect evidence for enforcement actions. Our acquisition of Meridian Financial includes specific provisions for addressing cultural bias and implementing comprehensive inclusion protocols. She continued revealing the transformation plans that would soon reshape every aspect of the bank's operations. She showed them organizational charts indicating immediate personnel changes that made Marcus, Patricia, and Jonathan realize their careers were ending in viral humiliation, documented by nearly 250,000 viewers. Mr. Mitchell will be terminated immediately for violation of federal anti-discrimination laws, Zara announced with judicial finality. Ms. Hendricks faces suspension pending comprehensive investigation of her supervisory practices. Mr. Hayes's regional management position requires immediate review for systematic compliance failures. Each termination was justified by documented evidence that no employment lawyer could challenge. The discrimination had been recorded, witnessed, and broadcast to audiences that included federal regulatory officials. Officer Rodriguez Zara continued turning to the security guard, who'd been uncomfortable with the discrimination from the beginning, will be promoted to Director of Inclusive Customer Relations, effective immediately. His recognition of institutional bias demonstrated exactly the professional integrity we need for cultural transformation. David's relief was visible to Jessica's camera. His moral courage during the crisis was being rewarded, while his supervisors faced termination for systematic discrimination. The Community Reinvestment Act requires member banks to serve all community segments equally, Zara explained, consulting federal regulations that most bankers never read carefully. Today's incident, combined with our broader discrimination analysis, represents exactly the systematic bias that triggers federal intervention. She displayed real-time market data showing Meridian Financial's stock price dropping as news of the discrimination spread through financial networks. Our acquisition was announced after market close last Friday. Today's discrimination incident will be our first public communication as the new owners. The financial implications were immediate and devastating. Social media sentiment analysis showed overwhelmingly negative responses to Meridian's systematic discrimination, while quantum dynamics was being praised for strategic intervention in biased financial institutions. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zara said, addressing the crowd of customers, employees, and online viewers who'd witnessed the complete reversal of power dynamics. "This concludes our assessment of Meridian Financial's customer service protocols. Tomorrow morning, we begin implementing the comprehensive reforms necessary for genuine inclusion and professional excellence." She closed her portfolio with finality that indicated the discrimination phase was ending and the accountability phase was beginning. Federal regulatory officials will review today's documentation as part of our transition planning. The Department of Justice has been notified of potential civil rights violations requiring investigation. Margaret Sterling attempted one final appeal. "Ms. Williams, surely we can resolve this matter internally through appropriate channels. Corporate communications could address any procedural inconsistencies without external regulatory involvement. Ms. Sterling, this matter became external 90 minutes ago when your employees threatened to call federal authorities on a bank owner," Zara replied. "Jessica's livestream has documented everything for regulatory review, congressional oversight, and legal proceedings." She gestured toward the cameras that had captured every moment of systematic discrimination. "The evidence is permanent, public, and irrefutable. Federal agencies don't ignore documented civil rights violations, especially when the victims are their own contractors and advisors." The lobby erupted in spontaneous applause as customers and witnesses celebrated the extraordinary accountability they'd witnessed. The sound built from scattered claps to thunderous ovation as ordinary people celebrated the defeat of institutional bias through strategic documentation and economic leverage. Zara stood slowly, her transformation from victim to authority complete. The systematic discrimination had been exposed, documented, and punished through the most effective means possible. Economic consequences that would reshape institutional behavior permanently. "This is what happens when preparation meets opportunity," she said, her words carrying across the marble lobby and through live streams to audiences worldwide. "When we document injustice and demand accountability through strategic action, we create the change our communities deserve." The quiet revolution had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Economic justice had proven more powerful than legal justice, creating lasting change that would protect every customer who followed. Now that we've established ownership, let's discuss the immediate reforms this institution will implement. Zara Williams's voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who'd just transformed from discrimination victim to corporate owner in the span of 90 minutes. The marble lobby of Meridian Financial Center had become her boardroom, with Jessica Chen's live stream serving as the most transparent corporate takeover in banking history. 247,000 viewers watched in real time as systematic change began replacing institutional bias. Margaret Sterling stood with the rigid posture of someone calculating career survival strategies while navigating the most expensive customer service failure in financial history. 28 years of banking experience had taught her to recognize when power dynamics shifted beyond conventional damage control, and this situation had moved far past traditional crisis management. "Ms. Williams, I want to assure you that Meridian Financial is fully committed to implementing whatever reforms you deem necessary," Margaret said, her tone carrying the careful deference of someone addressing their new ultimate supervisor. "We're prepared to move forward constructively and demonstrate our commitment to inclusive banking practices." The corporate language was designed to acknowledge the new reality, while positioning herself as an ally in the transformation rather than a target for termination. Margaret's survival instincts were activating as she calculated which approach would preserve her career through the ownership transition. "Ms. Sterling, the reforms aren't optional suggestions," Zara replied. Opening her portfolio, to reveal comprehensive transformation plans that demonstrated months of strategic preparation. They're the compliance requirements that justified federal regulatory approval of our acquisition. Implementation begins immediately. She placed detailed organizational charts on the marble counter, showing personnel changes that would reshape Meridian's entire management structure. The documents revealed the scope of transformation that would eliminate the cultural conditions, enabling systematic discrimination. Mr. Mitchell, Ms. Hendricks, and Mr. Hayes. Zara announced, with judicial finality, your employment with Meridian Financial Corporation is terminated immediately for violation of federal anti-discrimination laws and creating liability exposure that threatens institutional stability. Marcus Webb's face crumpled as he realized his 3 years of banking experience had just ended in viral humiliation, viewed by 250,000 people. His discrimination hadn't just cost him this job. It had created documentation that would follow him through any future employment applications. Patricia Hendricks clutched her supervisor badge like a talisman, but everyone could see her 15-year career drowning in the consequences of systematic bias. Her promotion prospects had evaporated along with her professional reputation. Jonathan Hayes stared at the termination documents with the hollow expression of someone watching decades of regional management authority collapse in real time. His crisis management expertise had proven worthless against the strategic documentation of his own discriminatory practices. Officer Rodriguez Zara continued turning to David Rodriguez with recognition of his moral courage. Throughout the crisis, your new position as Director of Inclusive Customer Relations comes with a $40,000 salary increase and direct reporting to the executive team. Your integrity during today's discrimination demonstrated exactly the leadership qualities we need for cultural transformation. David's relief was visible to Jessica's camera as his uncomfortable witness of institutional bias was transformed into professional advancement. His security background would be invaluable for identifying and preventing future discrimination incidents. Jessica Chen Zara added, addressing the tech influencer, whose citizen journalism had documented every moment of the systematic bias Quantum Dynamics would like to offer you the position of Director of Transparency and Accountability. Your real-time documentation skills are exactly what we need for institutional reform monitoring. Jessica's livestream erupted with congratulations from her 247,000 viewers as her citizen journalism evolved into corporate responsibility oversight. Her insider perspective on discrimination documentation would help prevent future incidents while maintaining public accountability. The immediate personnel changes are just the beginning, Zara explained, consulting implementation timelines that revealed the comprehensive scope of planned reforms. Quantum Dynamics has allocated $127 million for the first year of transformation initiatives across all Meridian Financial locations. The financial commitment was substantial and immediate, demonstrating that the reforms represented genuine institutional change rather than cosmetic public relations adjustments designed to minimize legal exposure. Mandatory bias recognition training begins Monday morning for all customer-facing employees. Zara announced, showing curriculum materials developed by leading civil rights organizations. 40 hours of initial certification, annual recertification required, with immediate termination for employees who fail to demonstrate competency in inclusive customer service. The training requirements would reshape Meridian's entire organizational culture, creating accountability systems that prevented discrimination through education rather than punishing it after the fact. Margaret Sterling attempted to demonstrate cooperation with the new ownership. Ms. Williams, I want to personally commit to supporting these reforms and ensuring smooth implementation across all management levels. Ms. Sterling, your continued employment depends on demonstrating leadership in cultural transformation rather than simply managing the transition, Zara replied, her tone indicating that executive survival required active participation in change rather than passive cooperation. She revealed performance metrics that would measure progress in eliminating discriminatory practices, creating objective standards for evaluating management effectiveness in promoting inclusion. The AI monitoring system launches next week across all 342 Meridian branches. Zara explained, showing technology demonstrations that made everyone understand the sophistication of the new oversight mechanisms. Real-time analysis of customer interactions will flag potential bias incidents for immediate supervisor review and corrective action. The technology wasn't theoretical. Quantum Dynamics had developed cutting-edge discrimination detection software that could identify problematic language patterns, escalation triggers, and differential treatment in real time, creating immediate accountability for customer service quality. Dr. Angela Davis has accepted our offer to serve as independent civil rights ombudsman, Zara announced, showing appointment letters that made Margaret realize the seriousness of institutional oversight. The former Justice Department attorney will report directly to the board with authority to investigate complaints and terminate employees for violations. Dr. Davis's reputation for uncompromising civil rights enforcement sent shockwaves through the banking industry. Her appointment demonstrated that Meridian's transformation would be monitored by someone with federal investigation experience and zero tolerance for discrimination. Community investment initiatives begin immediately with a $50 million fund, providing low-interest loans to minority-owned businesses and financial literacy programs in underserved communities. Zara continued showing partnership agreements with organizations that would distribute resources directly to communities most affected by banking discrimination. The community investment represented more than corporate social responsibility. It was systematic repair for decades of exclusionary practices that had limited economic opportunities in communities of color. Jessica's live stream had become the most watched corporate accountability event in social media history, with international banking oversight committees monitoring the transformation as a potential model for industry-wide reform. Federal regulators have commended our rapid response and comprehensive reform approach. Zara reported showing communications from the Federal Reserve, FDIC, and Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. They're monitoring our progress as a potential template for industry-wide discrimination prevention. What could have been a regulatory nightmare had become a case study in proactive accountability. Federal agencies were citing Meridian's transformation as an example of how financial institutions should address systematic bias through ownership change and comprehensive reform. The stock market has responded positively to our transformation announcement, Zara observed, checking real-time financial data on her phone. Investor confidence in our reform commitment has actually strengthened Meridian's market position beyond pre-acquisition levels. Quantum Dynamics' decision to increase their investment in Meridian rather than divest had sent powerful signals to other institutional investors. ESG-focused funds were viewing the acquisition as a transformation success story rather than a discrimination liability. 6 months from today, we'll conduct comprehensive assessment of these programs, Zara announced, showing evaluation metrics that would measure real cultural change rather than cosmetic policy adjustments. Success means continued investment and potential expansion. Failure means immediate investigation and personnel replacement. The accountability measures ensured that reforms would be implemented genuinely, rather than merely announced for public relations purposes. Every employee understood that their professional future depended on demonstrating inclusive customer service, rather than simply avoiding documented discrimination. Margaret Sterling's phone was buzzing with calls from other bank presidents, seeking guidance on preventing similar crises. The Meridian transformation had become industry-wide conversation about the economic consequences of institutional bias. This incident demonstrates that market-based accountability creates more effective reform than government intervention alone. Zara reflected addressing Jessica's livestream audience that now included congressional staff members and international banking regulators. When discrimination becomes expensive, institutions change quickly and permanently. The quiet revolution had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. Economic justice had proven more powerful than legal justice, creating lasting change that protected every customer who followed. Dignity isn't negotiable in financial services. Zara concluded her words carrying across the marble lobby and through live streams to audiences worldwide. When we demand change through strategic action and economic leverage, we create transformation that reshapes entire industries. The systematic discrimination that had begun the day was ending with systematic accountability that would prevent similar incidents across hundreds of banking locations. 1 year later, the Global Banking Equality Summit buzzed with conversation as Zara Williams took the stage at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Delegates from 47 countries had gathered to discuss the Meridian model of using strategic business acquisition to eliminate institutional discrimination. Dignity isn't negotiable in financial services, she told the assembled representatives, her words carrying the authority of someone who'd transformed an industry through strategic action rather than protest. When we demanded change through economic leverage, we created a model that now protects millions of customers worldwide. The numbers told an extraordinary story. Banking discrimination complaints had dropped 58% across institutions implementing quantum dynamics standards. Minority business lending had increased 41% industry-wide as banks competed to demonstrate inclusive practices. Jessica Chen's documentary, Owning Justice, A Banking Revolution, had premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, winning the Palme d'Or for Best Documentary. Her citizen journalism had evolved into a platform exposing systematic inequality across financial services globally. One smartphone recording changed everything, Jessica reflected in interviews broadcast to 89 countries. It proves that ordinary people can hold extraordinary power accountable when they document truth and share their stories strategically. The Quantum Dynamics Equality Fund had awarded $340 million in business loans to minority entrepreneurs, creating over 18,400 jobs nationwide. Success stories emerged from every community where discriminatory barriers had been systematically removed. David Rodriguez had become a sought-after speaker at banking conferences, his transformation from security guard to inclusion director inspiring similar diversity initiatives across financial institutions. His insider perspective on institutional bias made him invaluable for identifying problems before they escalated into viral crises. Economic consequences speak louder than moral arguments, Zara observed during a Stanford Graduate School of Business lecture that was broadcast to 127 universities worldwide. When discrimination becomes expensive, corporations evolve rapidly and permanently. Federal banking regulators had adopted quantum standards as recommended guidelines for all financial institutions. The Department of Justice cited Meridian's transformation as proof that market-based accountability could drive faster change than litigation alone. Marcus Webb had eventually completed comprehensive bias training and now worked for a community credit union where he shared his experience as a cautionary tale about unconscious discrimination. His willingness to acknowledge past mistakes became part of industry-wide education efforts. The ripple effects continued expanding globally. Every time a customer received respectful service regardless of race, the Meridian legacy lived on. Every banker who chose inclusion over bias honored those who had demanded accountability through strategic action. Corporate America had transformed how it viewed discrimination incidents. The quantum model spread to healthcare, retail, and hospitality sectors, with investment firms adopting economic leverage strategies to drive social progress across multiple industries. Real stories have real power. Zara concluded her UN address to standing ovation from delegates, representing every continent. When we document injustice and demand accountability through strategic business action, we create the change our communities deserve. The teenage girl, who had once coded in public libraries while homeless, now shaped global financial policy. The woman who had been questioned about her right to access basic banking services was setting international standards for inclusive customer service. If you've experienced discrimination in banking or financial services, document your story, Zara told the global audience. Share your experience. Your voice matters. Your documentation creates change. The quiet revolution that began in a marble lobby had become a worldwide movement, proving that preparation meeting opportunity could reshape entire systems of power. Subscribe to Stories of Strategic Change, Jessica added from her position as the summit's moderator. Together we document truth and demand the respect all customers deserve. The transformation was complete, but the model was just beginning. From one moment of documented discrimination had emerged a blueprint for using economic power to enforce social justice, creating lasting change that would protect generations of customers from the institutional bias that had once seemed unchangeable. The empire built with bare hands had become a force for systematic equality, proving that the most powerful response to discrimination wasn't anger. It was strategic action that made bias too expensive to sustain.